video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My substance, alcohol, my behaviour as addictive over the years, work, relationships, materialism, trying to look right, trying to be right, trying to think my way into happiness, and striving for perfection. And what happened? Well, having tried to think my way into happiness, and always taking the edge off, if you like, with a drink, I became dependent and addicted to a substance and behaviour. So, working harder, and I remember I had a boss once when I asked, is everything alright with what I'm doing? He said yes. And I said, can I do anything else? He said yes, do more hours. And the addiction is not always in us, it's in others as well. So, fear of how things might show up, I know that's always a big one. Fear of being found out, fear of being less than, fear of being ridiculed, fear of anything, and fear of fear. And the big news is that fear can be as much a fantasy as anything else, because we don't know what it is. And if we imagine fear, it can be far worse than any real fear most often, because if we are able to access the truth of where we are now, most things are manageable. Even the worst of news can be manageable. And we are powerless over reality. So what have I learned in recovery? Well, the first step for me was to realise I am powerless over reality. Real life is real, and I cannot think it different in the moment. What I can do is exercise choices to change me and my attitude to what is going on around me, and how I connect with everything that's going on. So if I have a drink inside me, I have taken the edge off me, and it really, really did take the edge off me over the years. So from a very successful convivial drinker, socially and at work and in career and all those things, drink took me to a place of abject misery, and that misery, I guess, was self-inflicted. But there does come a time when conviviality turns to dependence, and dependence turns to addiction. And when we get to a place of addiction, we don't have a choice. We are emotionally and physically in need of the next drink. So these days I try to keep sober one day at a time, and what's helped me immensely is family who kept me alive long enough to get that moment of clarity. In fact, it had to be several moments of clarity and several moments of rock bottom, because to knock out that self-will to be right and that self-will to recover on my own, well, for me, this particular recovering alcoholic, I couldn't do it on my own, and I needed help. And in the end, family, friends, community and professionals got me, I suppose, to a place of dried outness, but not sober, so that I could actually say, okay, what's going to help me, and does anybody know the answer? And there are many answers to sobriety, but the one which works for me most is the Fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. It's full of unique, authentic people who speak for themselves where they choose. And I speak here to share experience, strength and hope of what it is like to be in recovery one day at a time, and also to share a little bit of the literature of AA. So that's my personal choice, and I prefer my unique, authentic outlook based on information received through others and through life experience. So each day is different. I do some similar routines on a daily basis just to keep me on track and sober, and then let life happen and be open to the possibilities. Try not to judge the world harshly for not giving me multi-million pounds in my bank account, but just enough to get by. Try not to judge other people because they're all doing their job, which is to live life. And understand I have an equal right to be here, and they have an equal right to their lives as well. So we're not looking for acolytes or anything, especially in fellowship. It's people rubbing along together of equal size and equal stature, whether they're 1 day sober, 1 hour sober, or decades sober. And what do? We learn from each other. We keep on learning, and we keep on being a part of. And the greatest gift of returning to the human race with a sober head is that we feel included again, and we find our place in family if we can. Sometimes we can't. Community and society. We just find our place to be included, and fellowship is a damn good start. For me, in particular, because I isolated myself, because I detested what I had done. And I didn't understand that self-inflicted wounds, when it gets to addiction, we don't have that choice anymore. So, in recovery, we keep to choices to keep sober by following an open, honest, willing program of 12 steps of action to change attitude and behaviour. And that's what AA is all about. We make friends, we learn how to live again. And I will share the AA preamble or statement of intent here, because it slows me down into the moment of now, and then I'll share a little bit about my day yesterday and the AA literature just for today, which is all about the 12 steps. So here's the preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And it's about that bridge back to modern living, or that bridge back to family or community and society, or just starting afresh, anew. And, a single chap on his own here, and that's okay. And life could have been different, but life is just the way it is. So acceptance is of great importance, to accept where we are now and see how we go. Anyway, I do share daily reflections here, this book, and it's 1 page a day, and January is all about step 1, being powerless over alcohol and life being unmanageable, and what we can do about it. And it says here, January 9th, Act of Providence. It is truly awful to admit that, glass in hand, we have warped our minds into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of Providence can remove it from us. And my act of Providence, well, I got past the glass, I got to just drinking out of the bottle. But the act of Providence was, for me, realising I couldn't do it on my own. I couldn't get out of this jam. My act of Providence, it says here, a manifestation of divine care and direction, came as I experienced the total bankruptcy of active alcoholism, in other words, isolation for me. Everything meaningful in my life was gone. Yes, I was in the gutter. I telephoned Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I didn't. I just walked into a meeting. And from that instant, my life never has been the same. Well, it took a few attempts for me. I wasn't a very good student. When I reflect on that very special moment, I know that God was working in my life long before I was able to acknowledge and accept spiritual concepts. For me, God is truth. So if I find the truth of what is now, I've got a good chance of what can follow. The glass was put down through this one act of Providence, and my journey into sobriety began. My life continues to unfold with divine care and direction. Step 1, in which I admitted I was powerless over alcohol, that my life had become unmanageable, takes on more meaning for me 1 day at a time in the life-saving, life-giving fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And for me, poor student, but I got there in the end. And the act of Providence was opening up to the world again and just letting the light in, chink by chink. So the serenity prayer to God or good conscience, depending on your particular beliefs, is to acceptance of now. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference for me is just for today. All about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My addiction substance was alcohol, my behaviour trying to be perfect for 35 years, and in the end giving up and realising I was just a normal human being, making some progress, with plenty of gaps for making that progress. So what keeps me sober a day at a time? And the answer is a lot of hard work, and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, my family, my community, my society, civilization, medical people, you name it. We're interlinked in so many different ways that there is so much help available if only we can open our eyes to be helped. And the difficulty, obviously, for many people who find themselves in a place of addiction is, having got there on our own and isolated, we often feel it's right to get out of it on our own, using our self-will and our drive and our willpower. And the gift really for me is learning that willpower will fail. I cannot do it on my own. That was my first so-called spiritual awakening, I guess. And I don't say so-called in a way which is to undermine anything which is spiritual. My view of spiritual is very simple. It's the ability to cope with reality, with less denials and less filters, the gift of nature and providence, if you like, to face life on life's terms. So I had a little altercation yesterday with a taxi cab. It hit me, or I hit it, as a consequence of a passenger opening a door, and I ended up on the pavement and had bruises. But you know, in the olden days I would have been taking the taxi driver's number, shouting and cursing and saying, "How dare you open your door and cause me to be hit, or me to hit you," and find myself splattered on the pavement. And the answer, or that's a sidewalk in America, I guess. The truth is, it was happenstance. You know, it was of nature and providence. Same people in the same place, and doing the same sort of things, looking out for doing something right, like shutting a door properly, and me falling off my back as a consequence of hitting the open door. And, you know, I ache a bit because of it, but that's okay. So there has been a change in me. So far from being a litigating or litigious person, where I'm looking to blame others, I just see my part in it. I was there, I got knocked off, and I'm not dead. So what more can I say? I'm still alive here making videos. Anyway, the other part of this is to share experience, strength and hope about recovery. So I shall spend some time recovering from my bruises, but on a daily basis. And the fellowship of AA gives me this one-day time frame to work with. And at meetings, when I go, most often every day if I can, I still spend less time on recovery than I did on drinking. Maybe that's true in the sense of being at a meeting, but in truth, I spend every day being sober as best I can, and not kicking off like others might do, who have a frame of mind which is all about me. And last night wasn't all about me, it was about a set of circumstances, and I was just part of it. So AA and the fellowship, we share the preamble at every meeting, and it goes like this. It's a summary of what AA is all about. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, especially with taxi drivers. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I've been sharing readings from this book, Daily Reflections, and as Bill sees it, this book. So when I can't get to meetings, or I want a little top-up of recovery talk, or to keep my mind focused on the here and now, I use these books. And I missed sharing January the 8th yesterday. I ran out of time. So I'm going to do 2 readings from this one, Daily Reflections. So January the 8th went like this. Do I have a choice? The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. My powerlessness over alcohol does not cease when I quit drinking. In sobriety, I still have no choice. I can't drink. The choice I do have is to pick up and use the kit of spiritual tools Alcoholics Anonymous, page 25. When I do that, my higher power relieves me of my lack of choice and keeps me sober one more day. If I could choose not to pick up a drink today, where then would be my need for AA or a higher power? And I suppose the answer is, for me, I learn over and over again how easy it is to forget, purposeful forgetting often, things which are good for me, and always reminded of that one thing which is bad for me. So in this process I'm making just simple progress. And whilst I may ache this morning from my spill, I'm okay. And then for January 9th, it talks about an act of providence. And I say nature and providence often. Those words are synonymous with an understanding of truth about how life is. It is truly awful to admit that, glass in hand, we have warped our minds into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of providence can remove it from us. And that comes from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 21. My act of providence, a manifestation of divine care and direction, wherever it comes from, truth is spiritual, came as I experienced the total bankruptcy of active alcoholism. Everything meaningful in my life was gone. I telephoned at Alcoholics Anonymous, and from that instant my life has never been the same. When I reflect on that very special moment, I know that God was working in my life long before I was able to acknowledge and accept spiritual concepts. The glass was put down through this one act of providence, and my journey into sobriety began. My life continues to unfold with divine care and direction. Step 1, in which I admitted I was powerless over alcohol, and my life had become unmanageable, takes on more meaning for me, one day at a time, in the life-saving, life-giving fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And whilst it's a big advert there for AA, the truth is that, nature and providence, from the moment I stepped into an AA meeting, a long time back, it meant that I was aware in some shape or form that I had a problem with alcohol, and I had to do something about it. And in the first instance, I just denied it and did nothing about it, but kept on drinking and doing more harm to myself and to other people, simply because of my drinking, my absence from life, and my inability to see the truth of each day. And now I have a bit of a gentle prod, if you like, from literature and going to meetings about how to live my life, and living to the good of my good conscience as best I can, even when I'm merely a human being. I don't get it right every day, ever, but I get some bits right. And in this book, as Bill sees it, I've been doing them in a linear order, so I'm nearly at the end of this, and then I'll start again. It says, humility brings hope. Now that we no longer patronise bars and bordellos, now that we bring home the paychecks, now that we are so very active in AA, and now that people congratulate us on these signs of progress, well, we naturally proceed to congratulate ourselves. Of course, we are not yet within hailing distance of humility. We ought to be willing to try humility in seeking the removal of our other shortcomings, just as we did when we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, and came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. If humility could enable us to find the grace by which the deadly alcohol obsession could be banished, then there must be hope of the same result respecting any other problem we can possibly have. And it doesn't make us magic people, or that we have some sort of superior magic. All we do is live life normal. And if we have humility, we take account of the fact we're no bigger or no smaller than anybody else, and that life happens as it will. It's just the way we get the spills and thrills. And life in sobriety without drink is quite thrilling, because all the emotions start to work as they can, and sometimes they're very brittle and very big in the first year or two, and then they settle into a pattern of understanding that I'm feeling something these days. I have a sense of who I am, that I'm on a journey, that the journey is all and not the destination, because that's already written in hard facts about our mortality. So the gift is to live each day as best I can, just one day at a time, making gentle progress. And thank goodness my accident last night wasn't any worse. It will hurt me a while, but I'm okay overall.